Today's guest is George Chasiotis. He's the managing director of MINUTTIA, an organic growth acceleration agency for B2B SaaS companies. George started out as an independent marketing consultant, but was soon pulled down the path of creating an agency. In his free time, he reads on LinkedIn or buries his head in psychology books to get down the why of human behavior. Welcome, and over to you, George.
That sounds like it. Thank you very much for the intro, Matthias. And I guess that we can jump right into it. Let me share my screen and please confirm with me if you can see what I see. And it also would be nice to have the people who are joining us today let us know from where they are joining, if they have any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat just so we can cover them towards the end in the Q&A section. Okay, so a couple of things about today's webinar. We are going to talk about how it is like thinking beyond SEO-friendly content. Okay, two things that you need to know. This is not going to be a technical webinar. Unfortunately, we are not going to have any code or anything of that sort. Okay, this is the first thing. And the second thing is that if you are interested in content and if you are doing content already, even content that's created for a search audience, then I urge you to stay until the end because you will definitely learn something new. And also we will be having some giveaways towards the end of the presentation just for people who are joining us today. Okay, we will be sharing some tools that we are using internally at MINUTTIA as part of our content creation process. So the topic today is thinking beyond SEO-friendly content. Let's take a look at this quick agenda over here, just so we all know what we are going to go through. First of all, we are going to give a definition of SEO-friendly content. We are going to explain what are the limitations of SEO-friendly content. Then we are going to talk about a bit about content homogeneity, which essentially you can also hear it as copycat content, and we will explain what are the problems and the implications of that. Then we are going to present the three types of content, one of them content for search audience, but the other two, original and storytelling and opinion-based content, along with some great examples, just so you can grasp exactly what each type is all about. We are going to close with some mistakes that you should avoid at all costs. And after that, I will jump off the presentation and share with you a couple of tools that I mentioned previously that we will be sharing with you so that you can make a copy of them and use them if you like as part of your content creation efforts. Okay, so let's dive right into it. What is SEO-friendly content? To set the record straight, SEO-friendly content is content that's created for a search audience, okay? And a search audience, essentially, we are talking about people who are using a search engine like Google, for example. And I would say that the main scope here is that we create this content and we want this content to be consumed by search engine users. Now, don't get me wrong. As an agency, we are doing content that's created for a search audience as well. What we feel, though, is that a complete content strategy shouldn't be just keywords, going after keywords, okay? There is way more than that you can do as part of your content creation efforts in order to succeed and in order to stand out as a business, regardless of whether you're a software company, services, and so on and so forth. So here we have an example by Ahrefs, and quick disclaimer here, Ahrefs is the sponsor of our podcast, the SaaS SEO. So this is not the reason why I'm sharing it, but I want to be completely honest and transparent with you. So we have an example here of SEO-friendly content. This is obviously a piece of content that was created with the scope of, you know what, it would be nice if we have some visibility on the search engine results pages for the target term, which seems to be here, types of marketing. Nothing wrong with that. And we can see that from an organic standpoint, this piece of content, as a matter of fact, does pretty well. It ranks for over 450 keywords, which means that it gives visibility. Eyeballs see Ahrefs brand on the search engine results pages. It brings organic traffic because apparently some of these keywords rank in high enough positions in order to get people to visit that page. And it also seems that this page has traffic value, which means that some of the keywords seem to have commercial value in the sense of there are advertisers and brands who are paying to get advertised in Google for some of these keywords. So I would say that all in all, this piece of code serves its purpose, okay? But as I mentioned previously, there is more than that, okay? We are not saying that this is wrong. All we are saying and all we want to achieve throughout this webinar today is that there is an alternative approach, and there are more things that you can do, more creative things that you can do when it comes to content. Now, let's see some limitations of content that's created for a search audience. First of all, we can all understand that it is heavily biased by the search results that exist out there, okay? And the reason for that is because, unfortunately, if you are going to write a piece of content, for example, on types of marketing, the first thing that you will do is look every other result out there and say that, you know what, if I want to have chances of getting a high enough position in the SERPs, well, I may have to do what these other guys are doing, okay? So to begin with, the content creation process and the whole logic behind it is biased. Now, the second thing is that the scope in most cases is to satisfy the search engine. Well, guess what? The scope shouldn't be to satisfy the search engine. The scope should be to satisfy the search engine user, okay? Obviously, in order to get there, you have to get visibility. But I would say that you shouldn't stress over when it comes to content to satisfy someone else besides the user, besides the person you want to have on your website to consume your content. In many cases, unfortunately, content that's created for a search audience, SEO-friendly content, doesn't include perspective and opinion, which is one of the main things that's really missing when it comes to content. I would say, and I would argue, that in many cases, it feels plastic, like it doesn't have soul inside it, okay? Also, another thing, exactly because in many cases, SEO-friendly content fails essentially to drive business impact, and also because marketers have to report on something, what they report is, I would argue, vanity metrics such as keywords. Not that it's wrong to rank for many keywords, but we have to ask ourselves, does this drive any business impact? In other words, can we, make any correlations whatsoever between ranking for keywords and increasing revenue? If, this is what you're interested in, most businesses that are for profit are interested in revenue, obviously. Another thing that, it's a clear limitation, especially nowadays, that many businesses are trying to scale things up when it comes to content production, is that content is not written by people who are real experts when it comes to the topic that they are covering. And this is a problem, and something that, quite frankly, is really evident if you check most of the results that exist out there. Also, another thing is that there is no information gain. And the reason for that is because, as we mentioned in the first point, our process and the way we approach each new piece of content is heavily biased by what other websites are doing, what the other search results are including in their content, which is wrong. We also have to think, and we should think of, okay, this is what they are doing. What can I do differently? And also, what can I add more to this piece of content, to this topic? What can I bring to the conversation so that we can all benefit from this process? And above all, I would argue that it's definitely something that you will not bookmark and you will not revisit moving forward, okay? So these are some of the limitations of SEO-friendly content. And obviously, exceptions apply, but we have a vast experience when it comes to this type of content. And I would argue that this is something that we see as a pattern among many, many different results in many different industries. Now, this unavoidably, I would argue, leads us to what we call content homogeneity. You can also hear it, as I mentioned, as copycat content and so on and so forth, which is nothing else than we see, for example, here a screenshot of a search engine results page, a SERP, for the keyword, for the query types of marketing. And guess what? All the results, or most of the results that we see here above the fold, they are pretty much the same. They are list posts that list the best types of marketing that you should know, you should be aware of, and so on and so forth. Now imagine if we could approach that specific keyword, that specific topic, types of marketing, a bit more differently, a bit more creatively. How? For example, let's say that we invested in the last quarter as a business 10K in different types of marketing, as part of our marketing efforts. Well, we could do a piece of content about that. We spent 10K in 8 types of marketing. Here's what we learned. I don't know about you, but if I were in that same SERP and saw that result popping up somewhere in the top 10, I would like to know, regardless of whether I knew this brand or not, I would like to know what these folks did when it comes to marketing. And I would like to know what they learned from spending 10K in 8 types of marketing, okay? And all we had to do is just take a step back and say, wait, we could do this differently, okay? So this whole approach, this whole thing that we are presenting today and that we are sharing and we want to convey to you is that there is definitely one way you can do things, but there is definitely another more creative way of doing things. And this brings us to 2 additional content types besides content that's created for a search audience, SEO-friendly content, which is original content and storytelling and opinion-based content, okay? Let's get started. So first of all, we can get started with original content. Original content includes formats such as surveys, data studies, and original frameworks or methodologies. Let's try to dive a bit deeper and understand what each of these formats is all about through some great examples. Let's get to the first one, a survey. Here we can see a survey by SparkToro, which is an audience intelligence tool. And as you can see, SparkToro created a survey back in 2019 where they surveyed more than 1,500 SEOs in order to come up with a list of Google ranking factors, okay? I would say that the objective here is obviously establish themselves, the brand, as a thought leader in the space and create at the same time a linkable and shareable asset, something that people can refer to, they can share on social media, and they can link back to when they are searching for information around Google ranking factors, okay? Now, I would say that when it comes to performance, the highlight here is that this piece of content, at least, the last time that we checked, had backlinks from more than 323 different websites. That's pretty awesome, okay? A tip that we have here when it comes to specifically to running surveys, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, okay? Feel free to use a tool like Polfis, for example. We are not associated with Polfis in any way. We just, use it for our own service. You can use it to run your service, okay? You don't have to find 1,500 people and, send a survey to them. That's very difficult to do. Use a software or solution that can help you do everything very, very smoothly, okay? So this is an example of a survey. Let's see an example of a data study by gong.io. We had a study on follow-up emails, and Gong, particularly Gong, is very good at giving value specifically for their audience. I would argue that they know their audience very, very well, and they create very good content that is data-backed for their audience based on the proprietary data they have in most cases. Now, what is the objective behind a data study? Obviously, thought leadership. They want to establish themselves as a thought leader in this space, and at the same time, create a linkable and shareable asset. Now, does that work? You bet it works. As you can see here, this piece of content that was published as an article, if I'm not mistaken, by their head of content, got 1,601 likes and more than 300 comments on LinkedIn. Above all, These are eyeballs of people who see the brand, they get awareness of the brand, they interact with the brand, and they may visit the website instead of just reading the article on LinkedIn and get to know what Gong is and what Gong does. Okay, I would say that you have to be very careful here, because you wouldn't want to do a data study without knowing exactly what your audience is. If you know that, these are the pains that my audience have, okay, that's great. Go on and do a data study for that audience based on the pains that you have identified. You have to be very careful with topic selection here. And we talked about original methodology, which is not something easy, of course, but there is also, this is also another very creative approach to creating buzz around your brand and establishing, obviously, yourself as a thought leader in your space. Here we have a piece of content by Backlinko, which is a blog for content marketing and SEO, not SaaS, obviously. And we can see that back when this piece of content was first published, the owner of the blog, Brian Dean, had coined the term skyscraper technique. Okay, and as you can see here, what we can see in the left of my in the right of my screen is that people and websites were linking back to that page and referring to that page based on the name that Brian Dean has given to that tactic, that methodology of building backlinks for your page. That's a great thing. Okay, it's a great thing to take something that you have a framework, for example, or a process that you are using for doing things. Give it a name, and then let people start using that name as jargon, let's say, when they are referring to that methodology. That's a fantastic thing to achieve. Okay, objectives, obviously, thought leadership, having a linkable and shareable asset, and rest assured that this piece of content will get shares, as you can see here, and will be linked back to. I would say that once again, as we mentioned previously about data studies, that you have to make sure that this is something that the topic that you are going to create an original methodology on top of should be something that is a clear and evident pain point, once again, that your audience has. Okay. Any questions so far? Nope. Let's move forward then. So we presented the con formats that are included in the original con type, and now we can see some con formats that are included in the storytelling and opinion-based con. Okay, here we have personal storytelling. We will see a great example. Data storytelling, contrarian and controversial con, which is something that unfortunately many brands are afraid of, but I would argue that it can work great in helping you get attention. And finally, network-based con. Let's start with personal storytelling example. Here we have a Medium story by co-founder and CEO of Lemlist, which is an email outreach software. And as you can see here, the title reads from 1 to 2 million in ARR in 6 months with no fundings, and so on and so forth. Okay. This is sharing a personal story. It's by no means easy, but rest assured, and we have seen this with many different brands in the past. I'm not saying go on and build in the public, which is a kind of a trend right now. But I would argue that sharing, both the goods and the bads of your journey is definitely a great way of building an audience. Okay. Now the objective here is to create an emotional connection above anything else, to create an emotional connection between your brand and your audience. Because you know what? If I was a bootstrapped SaaS software company and I read this piece of content, chances are that I would resonate with many of the findings and the learnings and the pain points that the CEO of this company has gone through. Okay, and this puts me in the position to establish an emotional connection with this brand. And obviously, it works in terms of engagement as well. Now, this piece of content, which is published on Medium, has 942 claps. Not bad, okay? And we haven't even counted how many more likes and comments and so on and so forth it has on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social media. Now, one thing that you have to pay attention to here is that, you know, we don't believe in fake it till you make it. You have to be sure that what I'm sharing is 100% real, okay? And based on your own experiences and your own learnings and findings, and not based on someone else's, okay? Let's see a data storytelling example, which is something really fascinating as well. And here we have an example of a piece of content by Adespresso. You may already know it's a very popular SaaS company that helps you run Facebook ads and so on and so forth. That was acquired by Hootsuite, of course. Now here, as you can see, we have a piece of content that reads, we analyzed more than 750,000 Facebook ads, and here's what we learned. That's a great point. And that's a great way also to illustrate the value of your product, because guess what? Adespresso helps you with Facebook ads. And if I was interested in Facebook ads, I'm not, but if I was interested in Facebook ads, then chances are that I would take a further look into the product and check, you know, what Adespresso is and what Adespresso does. Now, what is the objective here? Obviously, thought leadership. If you're analyzing Facebook ads, it means that you know Facebook ads. And also to have a linkable and shareable asset. But at the same time, something that it's extremely important, it has a value on a product marketing level as well, because essentially by publishing a piece of content like this, you sort of speak, educate people on how to get the most out of their Facebook advertising campaigns. Now, when it comes to performance, shares, comments, backlinks, you name it, this piece of content has everything, okay? Now, I would argue here that you don't have to go to the extremes. You don't have to analyze 750,000 Facebook ads in order to create a data storytelling example. But you can work definitely with what you have, the data that you have at your disposal, okay? It can work tremendously well. And once again, you don't have to go to the extremes. Let's see an example of contrarian and controversial piece of content, which, as I mentioned previously, is something that most brands are a bit afraid of, especially as the brand grows bigger. As we can see here, we have an article by myself, which was published on LinkedIn. And as you can see, the title reads, "You are doing keyword research wrong. Here's why." Now, I don't know about you, but if I was interested in some way in learning more about keyword research, I would probably like to know what I'm doing wrong, okay? Obviously, when it comes to performance, it's not that this piece of content has, this article has the same number of likes or shares that we saw earlier, but I can assure you that people who engage with us in sales conversations refer this piece of content as part of, you know, I saw this piece of content and I decided to reach out because it seems that your logic is aligned with our logic, okay? Now, what I want to stress here, and it's extremely important, is to make sure that you really know what you are talking about. Otherwise, it's extremely easy for anyone, for that matter, to call you out and essentially let you know that you know what you're saying doesn't make sense. But here we are taking a contrarian stand, and instead of writing yet another guide on how to do 6 steps on how to do keyword research, we present something different, okay? And if we know what we're talking about, and you know, we feel that we know very well what we talk about, then chances are that this piece of content will be a huge success for us. And last but not least, we have what we call a network-based piece of content. And we have an example by Leadfeeder, once again, a software company, how ConvertKit grew from 98K to 625K MRR by doing 150 webinars in 1 year. Let's take a step back and understand what this piece of content is. It's essentially one interview, okay? All you have to do is set up the interview, find obviously a person who has to share an interesting story, ask the right questions, and that's it. You can then create a piece of content based on the transcribed version of your interview, and that's it, okay? But at the same time, look how powerful it is. I would love to know, if I was a SaaS company, how did ConvertKit manage to grow from almost 100K to more than 600K in MRR by doing 150 webinars, okay? And once again, it's just one interview. And I would say that the logic here is that you find people who have an interesting story to tell. You essentially prepare yourself and make sure that you will ask the right questions. And you get on the interview, you retrieve the information, and you turn that into a nice and engaging post. Obviously here, I would say that the objective is get engagement and have a linkable and shareable asset, but at the same time, definitely to expand your network, because let's face it, content is a great way to expand your network, knock on doors, meet more people, and so on and so forth. Okay. Any questions so far? Nope. Let's move forward with mistakes. And then, as I mentioned, we will jump off the presentation and share a couple more things before we start. We are ready to wrap things up. Some mistakes that you need to avoid in this process. The first one, you should avoid at all costs. Do it just for a while. Doing con marketing in general, and then just stop, because you know what? It doesn't work for our company. I would argue that you have to be persistent and consistent with your efforts. Con marketing should be, if anything, strategic rather than just tactical. There is nothing wrong with tactics in the context of a well-defined strategy, but in general, you have to be prepared that I should be doing this for the long term and not just for a couple of months or for the next quarter. The next thing that I would like to mention as a mistake is to publish one post per month. Unless this post is something that will shake up the whole industry, this is not content marketing, okay? And we are not talking about publishing like 20 posts per month, but you definitely have to understand and take a look at the brands that you follow and interact with and engage with online. You see them consistently over a long period of time, week after week, even day after day. This is why you follow them, okay? So publishing just one post per month is not going to get you anywhere. Another thing is promotion. I would argue that if you don't have a promotion and distribution plan in place, you shouldn't even bother creating content, okay? Because what unfortunately most brands are doing, and this applies to many SaaS companies as well, they hit the publish button and just hope for the best, okay? Let's hit the publish button and hope that this piece of content will perform. Well, guess what? You have to prepare yourself for success. It's not going to work like that, and it's not going to work if you are not going to go out there and let people know that, you know what, we have done this study this month. I really think that you should take a look at it, because I'm sure that you will get value from it. I know that you're interested in this topic, so please take a look at let me know. That's it, okay? Another thing that you should be careful of is copying, okay? Copying what your competitors do. I would argue, especially when it comes to software as a service companies, that occasionally it is okay taking a look at their websites and comparing their keyword profile with your keyword profile and seeing what keywords you are missing and what pages you need to create and so on and so forth. But especially when it comes to content that's not created for a search audience, I would argue that copying your competitors is not the best thing to do, okay? You should try to stand out by doing something different. Another thing, buying cheap content, okay, from marketplaces and so on and so forth. Let's be honest, there is no bottom as to how cheap content can get, especially for some content formats such as content that's created for a search audience. But I would argue that in the long term, this is something that may harm your brand rather than do any good. It may feel good at first. Okay, we have found a cheap resource, but in the long term, you have to be aware that this content will live on your website, and you may buy it cheaply now today, but moving forward, because it hasn't performed, you may have to delete it, you may have to update it, which means that you will have to pay for this cheap piece of content eventually. Another thing that we mentioned also earlier is to focus on the wrong metrics and on vanity metrics. Ultimately, I would argue that content marketing should generate business. If it doesn't, then it means that you're either not doing something correctly, or maybe your goals may be different, and generating new business is not the ultimate goal. But I would argue that it is good and it gives us satisfaction as marketeers to take a look at things like keywords and clicks and so on and so forth. But we have to ask ourselves, does this generate revenue for the business? Another thing that we often see as a mistake and that you need to pay attention to is to measure your success, the success of your content marketing efforts equally in all stages. What does that mean? It means that if you haven't done any content marketing whatsoever and you start today, okay, unfortunately, you cannot measure your success based on the same metrics as a company that's doing content marketing for 3 years consistently. Okay, I would say that it's the wrong perspective here, because you have to understand that you have to be basically realistic and say that, we haven't done it before. So we have to be realistic as to what our expectations are and how we will measure success. And the last thing, this applies especially for SaaS companies, is that you shouldn't try to fit your product in every post that you publish. I know that this is something that most SaaS companies are obsessed with. Let's include our product. Let's add some screenshots or a quick video walkthrough. Well, guess what? This is not something that will benefit users if the intent isn't, that I would like to see also how to do it with your product. So you have to be aware of the fact that your ultimate goal with each piece of content is to serve the scope behind creating this piece of content. If the scope is not, we can somehow mention our product here, well, you just shouldn't do it, okay? Don't force it under no circumstances. It will do more harm than it will do good, and than it will benefit your business. That's pretty much it. We have a couple more things to share before we move forward with a Q&A. Any questions before we move forward, guys? Okay, then. So let me just share a couple of things with you that we have prepared for you, and we will share, I guess, Matthias, with an email, or I don't know exactly how they will be shared, but you will have access to them. And these are things, by the way, that we use internally as well. Okay, so it's important for me to have them and to get value out of them after we finish with this webinar. So the first thing that we would like to share with you, we presented essentially today an alternative approach when it comes to content marketing, on how to think about content marketing and content strategy in general. Okay, and we have seen that you shouldn't at all times go after keywords. You can do other things as well. But I know that this can also, especially for a brand that hasn't done any content before, this can also sound all very difficult. Well, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. What we do in many cases is that we take a look at other websites, very big websites, in many cases, publications or industry websites that we know are very active when it comes to content. And we know that some of their content gets, very good attention online. And we try to learn from them. For example, we have here entrepreneur.com, and we are in Ahrefs, by the way, which is an SEO software, as we mentioned earlier. And we have entrepreneur.com, and we are in the top content report, as you can see. And here, what we can see is all the pages that are included in Ahrefs index for entrepreneur.com that are the best performing pages in terms of social media search, such as Twitter, Pinterest, and so on and so forth. Okay. And we can do the same for other websites as well. And not only that, such as Bloomberg, for example, but we can also limit the results based on specific topics that we are interested in. After we do that, we can export the results. Okay. We can gather results from all sorts of websites that are important to us, that are industry-leading websites, publications, and so on and so forth, that we know are relevant to our audience. We can export these results, and we can bring them to our own database. So what have we done here? We have essentially built a database of pages through Ahrefs exports that we have done from pages of websites that we know publish good content consistently. Okay, and at the same time, these are tested pieces of content in the sense that they are performing well, which means that people are amplifying them and they are sharing them and linking back to them as per Ahrefs report, as per Ahrefs data. That's great. Okay, we will not reinvent the wheel. We will use something that already exists. Okay, and that is already tested. And then you can bring the results here, and we will see how the Ahrefs export looks like, and how you can get the data here. And then all you need to do is come here and search by something that is interesting to you. For example, let's say that we want to do an article about content marketing, but you know what? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's see if we can get some inspiration from other already successful websites. So content marketing here. Okay. Now we can start scrolling down and scanning the results and see pieces of content that have already been successful, as I mentioned, from other websites that, once again, are important to us. Our content database right now has, I guess, around 25,000 results. You can obviously, once you get the topic finder Google Sheet, you can delete them all and start adding, assuming that you have access to a tool like Ahrefs, start adding and building up your database, because as I'm, sharing with you, this can definitely help you in getting ideas on content that seems to be successful based on websites that are prominent in your category. When it comes to how the Ahrefs export looks like, it looks like this. Some of the columns you shouldn't, copy and bring to the content database tab. We have highlighted these columns, with red. It's this one with the number essentially. It's the author. You don't need that. And you also don't need the published column here. So you can delete that and bring everything else to the content database. And as you bring more content to a database like that, the more value you will be able to get out of your searches in this topic finder tool. Any questions before we move forward? Nope. Let's continue. Another thing that I'd like to share with you on how do I go about finding opportunities? Okay, what you shared with us is great, and I like this approach, but I'm stuck. Like, I cannot really find what people in my industry are looking for. Well, we have presented an approach, okay, and I really believe, because I have seen this with our own team, that this approach can help. But you can also take another approach, Reddit, okay? You can visit this website over here, Reddit list, which allows you to see to search for subreddits that exist for specific topics. And let's say, for the sake of example, that we are interested, we are an SEO software, okay? And we are interested, obviously, in SEO, and specifically, we are interested in link building because we are building some link building capabilities as part of our product. Now, one of the most prominent subreddits for this specific topic is this one, SEO, okay? What you can do next is that you can add this in simple Google search with the same operator that I'm sharing with you now, site reddit.com, exactly as you know the URL is here, along with something that is important to you. In our example, as I mentioned, we are building link building capabilities inside our product, and we would like to know what are the things and the topics that people are interested in and discuss in communities like that online, okay? Link building. So what do we have here? Is there anything interesting that we could potentially use? How to get started with link building? Okay, I don't know. Not so interesting. I want to hire someone for link building, but I don't trust anyone. Okay, that sounds interesting. This could be an opportunity for us to create a piece of code that addresses that specific problem. How to hire a link builder or a link building agency when you can't trust anyone. I would literally use these exact same words, because the fact that someone is using the words and they essentially pose the question by using these exact words means that this is something that most likely other people have in their minds as well. So I would go here and scan through the results, and I would try to find piece of ideas for piece of content that we can create as part of our content efforts for developing our link building feature, okay? And you can see many different topics here, and many different and many interesting gems that, quite frankly, we are somehow involved in SEO and link building, but I was not aware that people ask these questions, okay? I didn't expect that people will ask, for example, let's take a look. Let me. Best quick ways, okay? People are looking for quick ways or paid link building strategies and so on and so forth. So many hidden gems here. And I would argue that also this is a great tactic as well for you to find topic ideas and without having to reinvent the wheel, okay? So this is another thing. And the last thing, you will also get access to this one. We, as part of our content creation efforts for our writers, have developed a list of data sources that we use often or less often, depending on the source, as part of the content creation process. And this can help you in some cases because you may want to, for example, quote a statistic about something, okay, that based on a specific topic that you want to cover and a piece of content that you need to write. Or you may want to create a data study. Well, guess what? You can use data that exists in other websites or analyze their data in order to make a data study out of it. In any case, here, what you can see is a very nice Google Sheet that we have built, and that, once again, we are using, our writers are using it actively when they are writing content, with the data source title, the name of the organization providing this data source, the URL, obviously, some tags which help us, I would say, in terms of taxonomy, and the type. Is it, a curation of data? Is it a study? Is it a survey? Is it proprietary data that they have and, it's theirs and we could potentially use? Is it a data set, or is it data visualization, and so on and so forth? So you can use that, once again, as part of your content creation efforts, not only to quote statistics based on topics that you are covering, but also for some of these websites to essentially come up with ideas based on data that they have and that you could create a piece of content upon, okay? And obviously you will have access to this once we finish with the webinar. And that would be it, I guess.
No questions? So far, quiet.
No, I'm okay. I don't know if you can see me, by the way. I cannot see myself, but I guess you can see me all this time. I hope you can
Yes.
see me all this time.
Yes. Thanks very much for joining, George. Um, I have one question. Like, where do you where do you read, or what are the resources you read? And the second one is like, who do you follow? What are, like, if you were to recommend two people?
That's a very good question. When it comes to, I would say that when it comes to finding content that I like and resonates with me nowadays, I would say SparkToro's blog is a great place. Some of their blog posts are, they present a different way of thinking when it comes to content marketing and how you can approach digital PR and, all these interesting things. And when it comes to people I follow, too many, I guess, to name. Many of the people I follow are the people whom we bring to talk to the SaaS SEO Show, which is our podcast. So you can take a look at some of the episodes, and rest assured that these are, some of the people that I really admire and I follow when it comes to marketing, content marketing, and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
Any other questions from people who are joining us? Anything that you'd like to ask? Anything that concerns you when it comes to content? Anything that you would like to bring up?
I think there's a question on the chat. For beginners, what would you advise for us aspiring content marketeers?
If you're a beginner, I would say that, and you haven't done any content before, I would say that you shouldn't care so much about SEO. And you shouldn't care as much about getting organic visibility, okay? You should care about things like demonstrating the value, if you're a SaaS company, for example, demonstrating the value of your product through customer stories, case studies, and so on and so forth. The reason for that, many reasons for that, but a couple of prominent ones. If you are at very early stages, your company may have to pivot, okay? You may not live long enough to see your content marketing efforts, specifically from an SEO perspective, become fruitful. And thus, I would argue that you have to do everything that you can in order to capture the attention of every visitor on your website and demonstrate the value of your product. This is not to say that all I have to do is, sell through my content marketing efforts. On the contrary, but once again, every person that is on your website in the very early stages matters, and a way to capture their attention is by demonstrating the value of their product through customer stories, case studies, and so on. And in addition to that, I would say that you could also, because another thing that you lack as an early stage company is most likely authority and thought leadership. I would also argue that you can do and try to do some thought leadership pieces of content as well, so that you start closing that authority gap, let's say, that it is evident that in the early stages you have.
Right. Okay. I would suggest we wrap up. We're a bit over time here. If that's okay. And no more questions.
It's okay. It's okay with me. I don't know if you have any more questions that people would like to ask.
All right. And thanks everyone very much for joining, especially to George.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, have